All right. Hello. Hello. We're live. Let's see. Is it working? Ooh, it is quite laggy, isn't it? Let's see. I'm going to just turn off my camera, turn it back on. All right. Let's see. Trying to see. I have this problem where my OBS is extremely laggy, and we're doing everything through OBS here. Can you guys see this lag, or is it just me? Yeah? All right, we're good to go then. Yeah, we're going to be talking about Anthropic today. No lag. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, cool. I have a lot to say. I stayed up late last night, and I wrote an essay about Anthropic. And yeah, I feel like they're in a really bad position, and so I want to talk about it. I am going to record a video, like a traditional video. So you'll see me do that, a little behind the scenes action. Theo inspired. Alex, if you see it being laggy, just let me know. It seems okay for now. I see a little bit of lag. Hey, from Taiwan. What did Anthropic do? Oh yeah, what did they do? Let's talk about it. All right, I need to get this working. There I am. Okay. Yeah. What did Anthropic do? So Anthropic, what are you doing at this point? So I'm gonna record, by the way, so you may see me do a few different edits. No lag, you're good. Thank you. Hey, from Germany, Sven. So this is it. This is from yesterday. Anthropic, what are you even doing now? Just yesterday, users found that Claude Code has been removed from some of the lower Claude subscription tiers, which is wild. And the way that they're handling this and the way that they're handling their communications in general is confusing, to say the least, disingenuous possibly, but certainly not leaving a good taste in the mouths of all the folks who are using Anthropic, including myself. I still love Anthropic models. Opus 4.6, Opus 4.7, these are fantastic models that I use every day, all day, and it's becoming harder and harder to trust Anthropic with my money. They are making it more difficult by the day to get the most out of the quota that I'm paying for. And so I want to talk about how we even got here. And it is all based on one miscalculation by Dario. And we're going to go over that. So let's start with this. Anthropic just pulled Claude Code from the Pro plan. Pro users wanting it need max now. $100 a month minimum. 5 times jump in price if you want to play with Claude Code. I'm on the Max 20X, so I'm fine. Flagging it for anyone on Pro who's about to find out. No announcement, just a pricing page edit. And let's look at the page. Can you guys still see this? Yeah. Okay. So here it is. And And according to them, and I'm going to go over this in a second, this was a pricing experiment. This is not rolling out to all users. This is just 2% of users But it turns out they must have vibe coded that decision because it actually seems to have rolled out to all users, even though they rolled it back. It's all very confusing, and I'm going to try to work through it with you to explain it. And I'm also going to explain the confusion itself. Why is Anthropic so confusing? So here we go. We have Claude Code, which was removed from the free plan and removed from the pro plan. Now again, they did apparently roll it back. If I go, let's go check actually. How do I get to that page? Okay, so it looks like it's back in the pro plan. It is not in the free plan, but we'll come back to this. So this is some of my essay you guys can see. I'm not gonna read it. I'm just gonna glance at it for inspiration on where I want to go with this. So for the longest time, Anthropic has been a company with a cult-like culture. They have been hyper-focused on AGI, and there is nothing between them and that. That is the only thing that matters. They don't have side quests, building image models, building video models. They don't really even care all that much about the consumer market. It is all about enterprise and all about coding. And there's a reason for that. They have had one of the best flywheels in the history of business. They build an incredible coding model. They sell that coding model to enterprise companies. Coding is the #1 AI use case in the world. Those enterprise companies pay up for the right to use their coding model, generating a ton of revenue. Then with all of that coding data and having a coding model, they put all of that together, and that coding model is able to train the next generation of model. Maybe that was Mythos, but we're seeing right in front of us self-improving artificial intelligence. And it all comes from the singular focus on coding as the use case. And that flywheel has been absolutely unstoppable. In fact, every other company, every other frontier lab looked at what Anthropic was doing and saw how well it was working and basically followed suit. OpenAI started cutting things. OpenAI had a renewed focus. They started cutting things like Sora, which was a major project of theirs. I know they were talking about using ads. They kind of rolled that back. They had a bunch of other side quests that just a couple months ago they said, no, we have a renewed focus on enterprise, with the brief exception of the TBPN acquisition, of course. But the flywheel, how did I want to say this? But their beautiful flywheel seems to be coming off its axle, or at least wobbling. And it all comes down to one miscalculation by Dario. And we're going to talk about that. But first, I actually want to do something maybe a little different with y'all. Let's see if I can get this loaded up. All right, look out for the flashbang that's about to occur. Oh, that did not work. Flashbang incoming. All right, I want to talk about this flywheel because it really... All right, I want to talk about this flywheel because it is really incredible. What they have done is incredible. Okay, so here's the flywheel. They build an incredible coding model. Oh, I know how to spell coding. That coding model serves one of the biggest markets in human history, AI coding. Okay, so they have enterprise, AI coding. Now that is making them, let's see if I have a green. Yep, green. That is making them so much money. Okay, they are making money hand over fist. They are making more money at this point than OpenAI has. Their revenue is absolutely incredible. Move the screen. Okay, I see. Yep, I see. There we go. All right. Oh, I realize. Right, I'm going to look at this while I do it. Okay. So they build their coding model. It's fantastic. Okay. They focused all their energy on building this incredible coding model. And from there, it allows them to make a bunch of money selling to enterprise AI coding use cases. Okay. Then from there, they get two things. Obviously, they get the money, but they also get the data, the coding data, okay? This is incredibly important. And so with that coding data, let's just say they have an incredible amount of code that they can build off of, okay? That code is then used to train their next coding model. But here's where it gets really interesting. Every time we see this flywheel occur, every single time, this model over here gets better. The coding model gets better. And as the coding model gets better, it's actually training their next generation of model. This is the most insane flywheel I've ever seen in my lifetime. Probably the most insane flywheel we've ever seen in the history of business, maybe with the exception of Google AdSense, which is the money printing goat. Okay, so again, coding model, great. Sell it, make a bunch of money. Actually, let's actually change this. It's a little different. I realize I'm missing one important piece. There's something right in between here, which are server racks. Pretend this is a server rack. I am not a good drawer. Okay, so this is a server, and they're buying compute. Okay, compute's incredibly important because it allows them to then serve more of their coding model. It allows them to train the next generation of model. But this is also where they had a big problem. The problem today is they don't have enough compute. Their flywheel is breaking down right before our eyes. Okay? Their flywheel breaks down. If they lose this compute, they can no longer serve as much of the coding model. The demand increases for other companies like OpenAI. And that was the big miscalculation that I was referring to. Dario pretty explicitly said they do not want to risk their whole company to buy enough compute to invest the CapEx for, and They didn't. And now we can tell, and I'm going to show you a bunch of reasons why that decision is biting them right now. They do not have enough compute to serve their current models, let alone their next generation of models. And while that's happening, they're doing things like limiting quota and pushing people off of awesome agentic projects like OpenClaw. And let me tell you something, OpenAI is eating it up. They are every chance they get using it as a PR dream against Anthropic. All right, so let's watch this clip. This is a clip of Dario on the Dwarkesh podcast, essentially saying he thinks OpenAI actually has a strong likelihood of going bankrupt. And that's the trade-off. That's the calculation or miscalculation that Dario made probably 18 months ago when he had the opportunity, as he was raising a ton of money, to invest and actually build out compute capacity. Actually, I realized one thing I didn't show. Anthropic versus OpenAI revenue. I know there was a nice graph of Anthropic's revenue. Yeah, no, Anthropic passed OpenAI at this point. If you guys have a link, let me know. Okay, we'll have to find it after Alex, and we just put it on screen as I'm talking about it. And so as you see in this graph, Anthropic has now surpassed OpenAI's revenue, annual recurring revenue. I believe they're at about $30 billion a year. And they're also doing it at a much lower cost. And that's kind of the culture at Anthropic. They wanted to be more cost efficient. And so they're generating more revenue and at a lower cost, which is fantastic. But it also means that they are more risk averse. Whereas OpenAI and Sam Altman, they're going all in. It's either they're reaching AGI first or they're going bust. And so while the other AI labs couldn't acquire enough compute, they were spending every penny they possibly could to acquire that compute, Dario said, we're good. Let me show you. All right, let's watch this together. Let's see. Hopefully, I need to change the audio for a second so you guys can hear this. Let's see if this works.
But there's a...
Nope, that did not work.
There's a real dilemma here, and where
I don't know if you guys can hear this other than through my mic. Darn it. Why isn't this working? Only through mic. Yep. Okay. This was working yesterday. I think we got to get this sorted out. It's unfortunate. Let me see if I can get this to work.
I I've settled on it is
no. Okay, I'm just gonna put my mic up to it. Yeah, sorry, there's not a better way to do this.
it will be.
Okay, so we're gonna watch it together.
But there's a real dilemma here, and where I've settled on it is it will be faster than anything we've seen in the world, but it still has its limits. And so then when we go to buying data centers, you again the curve I'm looking at is okay. We've had a 10x a year increase every year. So beginning of this year, we're looking at 10 billion in annual rate of annualized revenue at the beginning of the year. We have to decide how much compute to buy, and it takes a year or two to actually build out the data centers, to reserve the data centers. So basically, I'm saying like in 2027, how much compute do I get? Well, I could assume that the revenue will continue growing 10x a year, so it'll be 100 billion at the end of 2026 and 1 trillion at the end of 2027. And so I could buy $1 trillion. Actually, it would be like $5 trillion of compute, because it would be $1 trillion a year for 5 years, right? I could buy $1 trillion of compute that starts at the end of 2027. And if my revenue is not $1 trillion, if it's even 800 billion, there's no force on earth, there's no hedge on earth that could stop me from going bankrupt if I buy that much compute. And so even though a part of my brain wonders if it's going to keep growing 10x, I can't buy $1 trillion a year of compute in 2027. If I'm just off by a year in that rate of growth, or if the growth rate is 5x a year instead of 10x a year, then you go bankrupt. And so you end up in a world where you're supporting hundreds of billions, not trillions, and you accept some risk that there's so much demand that you can't support the revenue, and you accept still some risk that you got it wrong and it's still so. And so when I talked about behaving responsibly, what I meant actually was not the absolute amount. That actually was not. I think it is true we're spending somewhat less than some of the other players. It's actually the other things, like, have we been thoughtful about it? Or are we YOLOing and saying, oh, we're going to do $100 billion here, $100 billion there? I kind of get the impression that, some of the other companies have not written down the spreadsheet, that they don't really understand the risks they're taking. They're just kind of doing stuff because it sounds cool.
All right. I don't know if we're going to use that whole clip. I think the important parts are him basically saying that OpenAI, there's a chance that they go bankrupt. And he kind of, it was very clear. He does think they're going to continue growing at that rate, but in the slight chance that they weren't going to grow at that rate, their annual recurring revenue, there was no way for them to prevent bankruptcy. But it turns out they are growing at that rate. And that calculation of, hey, let's not go all in on CapEx, let's not acquire every single ounce of compute we possibly can, was a massive mistake, because right now they cannot keep up with their own demand. And two things are happening in parallel because of that. One, they are having a PR and comms nightmare. They are putting a sour taste in so many people's mouths, which I'll go over in a minute. And then at the same time, OpenAI is stepping up like the hero, right? Like the white knight, and they are capturing all of that excess demand that Anthropic cannot service. So now I'm looking for it's not only that Anthropic has all this revenue and that they're growing so fast. I think they were thinking that they were forever going to be able to rely on their smarts to keep costs down. They have more efficient models. They have less employees. And so what they're thinking is, no, we're going to be able to continue that. And it's okay if we don't have all the compute in the world because our algorithms will continue to get better. But they haven't, or at least they have, and they're not keeping up with demand. And that's the key. That is where this whole thing breaks down. Demand blew past every single projection and continues to increase. And a lot of it is because of agentic engineering. Personally, I'm running, 10 agents in parallel at the same. Personally, I'm running 10 agents in parallel all day long, all night long, and it's using up much of their compute. And then we had this huge boon of, and then we had this huge increase in agentic usage for more kind of normal folks from projects like OpenClaw and Hermes, and those started to get banned. And so that leads us to the second mistake that Anthropic is making right before our eyes right now, which is why I'm saying, what's going on with you, Anthropic? Why are you doing this? And I usually try to be pretty positive. I usually try to be optimistic, but I have been getting frustrated. Maybe not to the point of Anthropic's number one hater, Theo, but it certainly is pissing me off because they're doing everything they can to prevent me from using my tokens that I'm paying them for. I am paying them $200 a month, and they are doing whatever they can to me and to everybody else who uses Anthropic subscriptions to try to prevent me from using my own tokens. So it all started right around the time that OpenClaw came out. And OpenClaw by default used, and OpenClaw recommended, Peter Steinberger recommended using Opus as your primary orchestration model. Still to this day, it is the best model to use in OpenClaw. It has the best personality. It has the best tool calling. It just does. I know a lot of people are moving to GPT 5.4 for coding. That's great. But you cannot deny OpenClaw works best with Opus. And so out of the box, OpenClaw allowed you to plug in your Claude subscription. But it wasn't clear if that was against their terms of service from the beginning or not. And within a couple weeks, OpenClaw got acquired by OpenAI, and Anthropic started hammering OpenClaw users. First, they had this like back and forth, this weird communication of, yeah, it's allowed, but no, it's not allowed. And okay, it's only allowed if you use the agent's SDK. And yeah, it's just like, it's completely backwards. And it was very confusing. And the way that they're communicating is they put out a public statement, and then some random employee from Anthropic makes a comment or a reply on somebody's tweet clarifying it, but actually making it even more confusing because it's conflicting with the terms of service. And so we're all looking at each other. And by the way, this has been going on for weeks now. We're at probably 2 months, and I still have no idea to this day if what I'm doing with OpenClaw and Claude is actually within their terms of service or not. And that is crazy. And they said, and they continue to say that they will clarify things, that they're going to clear it up, and they just make it worse. Every single time they make it worse. Let me show you. So here's Boris. Okay, so this was a couple weeks after some of those. I want to find that original tweet, actually. Let me see if I can find it. From Anthropic talking about OpenClaw and Claude subscription usage, whether against TOS, and that they are going to clarify. Let's see if I can find this right now. If I can't, I'll try to remember what it was, and hopefully we'll just do it in post. Oh, perfect. Yeah, good job, Grok. Are you going to give me a link to it, though? Okay, so here's the original tweet that started all of the confusion. This is from Tariq This is from Tariq from Anthropic. Oh my gosh, I struggle with this last name. Shihipar. This is from Tariq Shihipar from Anthropic. This was a reply to someone's post, and this was after they clarified that the Claude subscription is not allowed to be used in third-party harnesses. Okay, OpenClaw is a third-party harness. Apologies, this was a docs cleanup we rolled out that caused some confusion. Nothing is changing about how you can use the Agents SDK and max subscriptions. This was so confusing at the time because nothing is changing. So am I allowed to use my Claude subscription in OpenClaw? And if I'm not using the Claude subscription through OAuth, can I use the Agents SDK? The Agents SDK is their own harness, but then I have to call the Agents SDK through OpenClaw, which actually worked quite well. It worked really well. And so I switched to that for a while. But then it's still not clear, and they never clarified it. He went on, we want to encourage local development and experimentation with the Agent SDK and Claude-P. If you're building a business on top of the Agent SDK, you should use an API key instead. This is really important. If you're building a business, if you have production scale use cases, use the API. But he didn't say you have to, he said you should. And OpenClaw is a personal project. It is not a business. I'm not building a business on top of it. I'm automating my own personal use cases. And so this became even more confusing. We'll make sure that's clear in the docs. Hey, turns out they never did. They never actually made it more clear. The docs say the same thing, and they never clarified it. Okay, so then a couple weeks later, we're seeing it's becoming very clear that Anthropic is having compute demand issues. They cannot keep up with compute. In fact, let me just go over to the Claude status page and show you. All right. Let me turn this off. Sorry about the flashbang. Okay. This is Claude.ai, and they have a 98.8% uptime right now. The fact that they're not even talking about the 0.99, how many nines past the decimal that they have. No, they actually just have a 98.8%. That's wild. Look at all this downtime. Here's platform.claude.com. 99%, but not even close to a single 9 past the decimal. We have the Claude API at barely 99%. Just nothing but downtime over the last 90 days. And obviously, when I say nothing but downtime, I am talking relative to their competitors. Let me just show you, actually. So it's funny, as soon as I show you in this video, we're currently experiencing issues with ChatGPT, but fine. Their API, ChatGPT's API, 99.9% uptime. ChatGPT, 99.8% uptime. Codex, 99.98% uptime. Sora, which, it's probably 100% because it's not used anymore, fine. And then FedRAMP, which I'm not actually sure what that is, 99.91. The important ones are the first three, API, ChatGPT, and Codex. They have phenomenal uptime, especially as compared to Anthropic, which has abysmal uptime. FedRAMP is DOD. Thank you, Hugh G reaction. Thank you. Okay, so we all saw it, but then they started doing something that really angered me. It really, as somebody who has been paying for my Claude subscription, they don't give it to me. They give me no love in that department. I don't want to say that. They don't give me anything for free. They don't pay me. They don't sponsor me. No free tokens. And even with that, and because of that, I am paying them full rate just like everybody else. And I can't even seem to use all the tokens that I purchase. So this happened on April 3rd, 2026. And if you're not familiar with what April 3rd was, it was the Friday at 4 p.m. on a Friday on Easter weekend, a holiday weekend. And here's what they said. Starting tomorrow at 12 p.m. Pacific, Claude subscriptions will no longer cover usage on third-party tools like OpenClaw. Okay, let's keep reading. You can still use these tools with your Claude login via extra usage bundles, now available at a discount, or with the Claude API key. What? It doesn't even make sense. I can't use my Claude subscription, but can I use the Agents SDK? They didn't even mention that because previously they said the Agents SDK was okay to use as with third-party harnesses, but now it's even more confusing. And I can use the Claude login, but I have to turn on extra usage. How does that affect my pricing? They give basically zero transparency on how the quota actually gets used. The only thing they're going to say is stuff like, you're going to use more quota now, or you're going to use less quota during these hours. And it's just so confusing. It's so opaque. Alex, this we might want to put, I think I want to talk about the carrot and the stick first. So I'll continue this, and then hopefully we'll put this later in the video, like right after. We'll just order it differently. So Boris continues, we've been working hard to meet the increase in demand for Claude, and our subscriptions weren't built for the usage patterns of these third-party tools. Usage pattern of these third-party tools. You know what he's talking about. I know what he's talking about. He's talking about agents. He's talking about OpenClaw. And why not? Those are my tokens. I'm paying you for tokens. How I use my tokens should be my business. It does not make sense that they're talking about it like that. The only way that this would make sense is if they did the calculation that, okay, somebody's paying us $200 a month. We're giving them X tokens, but we're assuming they're using fewer than X tokens. Our business model is predicated on them using less tokens than they're paying for, which is not really abnormal, but to enforce it on the policy level, which is not really abnormal. A lot of businesses are built like that. Think about subscriptions at car wash. Think about subscriptions at car wash. Think about subscriptions at car washes. You are paying them, and they're assuming that you are not going to use enough to cost them more than their subscription, right? That is the entire business model. But it just is different here. I'm paying for my tokens. I want to use my tokens, and they are enforcing it at a policy level that I can't use all of my tokens. And they're pushing you towards doing things manually. And when I say manually, I mean questions and answers in Claude Code, questions and answers in Claude AI, maybe a little bit of usage in Claude Code, but certainly you're not going to use their tokens outside of Claude Code. So they tried to make up for it. Subscribers get a one-time credit equal to your monthly plan cost. If you need more, you can now buy discounted usage bundles. Okay. Now, this last statement doesn't really make a lot of sense given their communications. Okay. We want to be intentional in managing our growth to continue to serve our customers sustainably long term. This changes steps towards that. And now here's the thing that they always do. Okay. Eric Buse says subs can still be used for personal local tools that use or wrap the Claude harness like Claude Code and Claude Code Headless and Agent SDK, right? Boris says, yep, working on improving clarity here to make it more explicit. This was April 3rd. It is now April 22nd. Let me let you guess if they clarified it. Obviously, the answer is no. There's no clarity. We have no idea what's allowed and what's not allowed. How is it taking so long? This is the big, frustrating thing that Anthropic does. They put out some random policy change. We have to react as quickly as we can to it. It's not quite clear what it means. They say, here's some clarity. It's not any more clear. And then they say, we're going to clear it up even more soon. And then they never do. That's their spiel. That's their MO. I don't get it. Okay, so I think this section should go before. Let's see. Grok has been pretty good at getting me tweets. Find me the tweet. Link me to it where Tariq from Anthropic talks about giving 2x quota after peak hours. Luigi Clemente, talk frustrating like avoiding Kimi K2.6. That's good. Okay, and all along, while they're trying to manage all of this demand, they are using both the carrot and the stick. They tried the carrot first, and then they brought the stick out. Here's the carrot. Tariq posts, this is on March 14th, 2026. It's spring break for Claude Code. Enjoy 2x usage during off-peak hours. So I'll talk about what those are. And weekends for the next 2 weeks. Earl Grey, I have, as far as I know, no shares in Anthropic. Just FYI. So he goes on to clarify, Claude has been growing incredibly fast recently and we've hit some bumps along the way. We wanted to thank you for bearing with us while we scaled. I hope you enjoy this alongside a million contexts. Excited to see what you build. Great. Okay. I'm for this. They're using the carrot. They're saying, hey, here's an incentive to use more of your usage outside of peak hours. And in fact, that incentive worked on me. The entire world runs on incentive. So what did I do? I took my OpenClaw and I moved a lot of the workload that could be done asynchronously and I put it at midnight and I put it at 1 a.m. and 2 a.m. and just throughout the night for me. And it worked and it was fine. And I noticed that my quota was depleting less quickly. Great. But then this happened. On March 26, 2026, Tariq posts, to manage growing demand for Claude, we're adjusting our 5-hour session limits for free, pro, max subs during peak hours. Your weekly limits remain unchanged. During weekdays between 5 a.m. and 11 a.m. Pacific, okay, you'll move through your 5-hour session limits faster than before. No clarity on how much faster. No clarity on how the different products or the different models move through the quota more quickly. Just a generic statement. You got to use more of your quota. And this is the most frustrating part with me. If you're going to have policies, just be clear with them. This is something that I cannot stand when companies do, and Anthropic seems to be guilty of it more so than any other company I've ever seen. So here he goes on, and he specifically points out who this will be affecting. And once again, we know who it is. We've landed a lot of efficiency wins to offset this, but 7% of users will hit session limits they wouldn't have before, particularly for pro tiers. 7% of users. Who do we think he's talking about here? Who are those 7% of users? Well, it's OpenClaw users. It's Agentic harness users. That's who it is. Okay? He is punishing people for using third-party harnesses. If you run token-intensive background jobs, shifting them to off-peak hours will stretch your session limits further. Overall weekly limits stay the same, just how they're distributed across the week is changing. He's punishing the 7%, and that number sounds about right. 7% of us are on the frontier of how we're using coding agents, how we're using agentic harnesses like OpenClaw and Hermes. 7%, okay? And that's who is getting punished by this policy. Now, I will remind you again, these are tokens we're paying for. These are tokens we have already paid for. Yet, we can't use them. They are making it increasingly difficult to use our own tokens that we pay for. And during this PR nightmare that Anthropic is self-inflicting, OpenAI is loving it. And I have so many examples of this. And here's one. So April 7th, right around the same time, Sam Altman tweets, to celebrate 3 million weekly Codex users, we are resetting usage limits. They have been resetting usage limits for anything. If the sky is blue one day, they reset your usage limit in Codex. They are putting their foot on the neck of Anthropic on the comms and kind of just the overall vibes front. We will do this every million users up to 10 million. Happy building. Unreal. And by the way, this isn't a one-off tweet. The Anthropic team, the OpenAI team has reset limits so many times over the past 2 months. And of course, they acquired Peter Steinberger, okay, the creator of OpenClaw, and they are very pro OpenClaw, pro open source, maybe not overall as a model company, but certainly as a software company. OpenAI seems to be very open source friendly. And so they acquired Peter Steinberger. They allow you to use your Codex subscription in OpenClaw, no problem. To be frank, it doesn't quite work as well as Opus, but I never have to worry about changing policy. I never have to worry about them pulling the rug out from under my feet. Let's keep going on this, actually. This is just, actually, I'll come back to this. Let's move that. Yeah, these are all related. I see. Okay. All right. I think I'm going to move these up here. I'll talk about these in a minute. Okay. And so that brings us to yesterday, where they did the thing again. They ran an experiment, and According to them, only 2% of users saw a new pricing page with Claude Code removed from both the free tier and the pro tier. Here it is, free tier, pro tier, Claude Code removed. Why can't you use Claude Code? You're paying for the tokens. Why can't I use it? I don't understand. Just limit my quota, give me clarity on what my quota is, but let me use those tokens in any way I want. It not only doesn't make sense because it puts a sour taste in my mouth, but it doesn't even make sense from a product strategy or a company strategy perspective. They want as many people using Claude Code as possible. If somebody at the free tier or the pro tier wants to use their very limited tokens inside Claude Code, let them. That might be the inspiration for that person to build something cool in their very limited quota budget and then go to pay you a lot more, to pay you directly through the API, to go to the max plan. What could possibly be the logic to stop people from using Claude Code with their Claude subscription? What is the logic? By the way, am I missing something? If chat, you have an idea about what could possibly, or what they could possibly be thinking, please let me know, because I can't figure it out. Okay, so while Anthropic is shooting them on, while Anthropic is shooting themselves, while Anthropic is shooting themselves in the foot on the PR side, on the comm side, again, like I said, OpenAI is eating it up. They're loving it. Let me show you a few examples. Here's Thibaut from the Codex team. Actually, let me come back to that. Let me come back to that in a second. So here's Amal, who is the growth person at Anthropic, to clarify their position. And they did the thing again. For clarity, we're running a small test on about 2% of new prosumer signups. Existing Pro and Max subscriptions aren't affected. He goes on to say, when we launched Max a year ago, it didn't include Claude Code, Cowork didn't exist, and agents that run for hours weren't a thing. Max was designed for heavy chat usage, that's it. But again, if you have a quota, you should be able to use the quota any way you want. And their thinking was, you're going to pay for the quota and you are unlikely to use all of it. And then all of a sudden, all of these products, Agentic coding and OpenClaw, started coming out, allowing you to use all of your quota, the quota that you're paying for, and now they're trying to prevent you from doing it. And he's basically admitting that right here. So since then, we bundled Claude Code into Max, and it took off after Opus 4. Cowork landed, long-running async agents are now everyday workflows. The way people actually use a Claude subscription has changed fundamentally. So what? Increase the price, lower the quota, be clear about it. But to revoke access to certain tools doesn't make sense to me. Engagement per subscriber is way up. How did they not predict this? This is that demand that I said that they miscalculated. There is insane demand for tokens. And that was the big miscalculation that we talked about earlier in the video. They didn't invest enough in compute, and now they are scrambling to figure out what to do. We've made small adjustments along the way. Weekly caps, tighter limits at peak, but usage has changed a lot, and our current plans weren't built for this. Again, admitting that they planned on you never using the quota that they allotted to you. Crazy. So we're looking at different options to keep delivering a great experience for users. We don't know exactly what those look like yet. That's what we're testing and getting feedback on right now. When we do land on something, if it affects existing subscribers, you'll get plenty of notice. Not true. Not true. Remember OpenClaw getting that email at 4 p.m. on a Friday and having less than 24 hours to change off of to change off of Opus within OpenClaw. Remember that? We didn't get plenty of notice. That's BS. You will hear it from us, not a screenshot on X or Reddit. By the way, Alex, I don't know if I actually said the part of the 4 p.m. and having 24 hours to get off of the Claude subscription earlier when I was talking about it. And then, by the way, Sam Altman was drunk last night and drunk tweeting, and it was hilarious. He just replies, "Okay, boomer." And he did a lot of other things. Very funny tweets. So if you're watching this chat, by the way, go look at Sam Altman's tweets from last night. He said he was drunk, and he was just replying with no shits given, and it was hilarious. All right, now back to here when I said all the while OpenAI is eating it up. And so here's Thibaut from the Codex team. Ready? I don't know what they're doing over there, but Codex will continue to be available both in the free and plus $20 a month plans. We have the compute and efficient models to support it. A big claim for a while was that Anthropic had much more efficient models. I think they did, but maybe OpenAI has increased their efficiency at this point. Oh, you want to see the Sam tweets? Okay, give me a moment. Let me finish this part, and I'll pull up the Sam tweets. Give me a sec. We have the compute and efficient models to support it. For important changes, we will engage with the community well ahead of making them. I mean, Anthropic didn't even mention engaging with the community. It just said giving us a lot of heads up, and they still don't do that. Transparency and trust are two principles we will not break, even if it means momentarily earning less. A reminder that you vote with your subscription for the values you want to see in this world. Man, he's going for the throat. Thibaut, what a tweet. What a tweet. This is from last night. Also, we want you to have a lot of AI. This is, I think, as Sam was starting to get a little tipsy, but I'll come back to that. Let me come back to Sam's tweets. And of course, Rohan from the Codex team also had to get a dig in. For clarity, we are running a small test for 100% of Codex users where we make our best models available to all users, make Codex available to all plans, free and paid. Claude Code users aren't affected. Ooh. And then Sam Altman, this is kind of peak Sam Altman drunk tweet. How about a rate limit reset in a week or so? Just continuing to throw salt on the wound. My goodness. And then, of course, Thibaut, get the button ready. So good. It's so good. It's becoming a meme that Thibaut just resets quotas for any reason. They're looking for a reason. And, I actually just thought of something. A lot of people gave OpenAI shit for talking about rolling out ads within ChatGPT. Now, of course, that was for free users only. I think they had a Go plan for $8 a month that would be at least partially subsidized by advertising. And so many people did not like that. There was such a negative reaction to that. And only in this moment, I'm starting to realize maybe it wasn't so bad after all. They're trying to get the maximum amount of people to use artificial intelligence. The majority of the world cannot afford even the $8 a month plan, let alone 20, 100, 200. The majority of the world cannot afford that. And so they're trying to get the best models. They're trying to get the best AI tools in the hands of the maximum amount of people in the world, where at the same time, Anthropic took out Super Bowl ads to effectively talk crap on OpenAI and their plans to roll out ads. But I think that's the culture difference. OpenAI wants AI for the world. Now, whatever you think about that, since they're not really open sourcing their models, fine. Anthropic is definitely on the other side of the spectrum. They have all closed source models. They don't open source anything they do. And in fact, with Mythos, they're not even releasing the model publicly, at least not yet. So they have a very different approach to artificial intelligence, a very selective approach. They are kingmakers. They are going to choose who gets to use the model. And I think that strategy is going to hurt them in the long run. All right, let's look at Sam Altman's tweets from last night. Oh, cool. OpenAI just released something. Workspace agents. I'll have to check that out later. Looks like Thibaut says team is working hard together with Stipe, Peter Steinberger, to make open cloud models and ecosystem be the obvious way to enjoy your cloud. It's not currently, but fine. Here's from last night. So actually quite depressed about the Mythos stuff, grinding my way through. I'll do it with or without them. We got you. All right, not a big deal. Let's see. Here, somebody, Nick, commented, change your profile pic, bro. Change yours. It sucks. Straw person is easily my least favorite wokeism. What are we worried that the straw ceiling hasn't been shattered yet? We've now proudly earned the right to get beat up on easily. Here he's saying, tonight I have had a couple of drinks to Kylie Robison. The only, I think she actually puts it in her, Robison. Okay. The only relatable thing any of these tech CEOs have done is tweet while they're inebriated. Really think they should center their comms around this. Tonight I've had a couple of drinks, replying to, look at this. So he said, Amal, I think we talked about this, but, he's talking about that 2% test, and he says, okay, boomer, which, it's not even funny, but it's funny that it's coming from Sam, I guess. Here's something crazy. He basically drunk confirmed that the new version of GPT 5.5 is coming Thursday, right? So here, Dennis says, if you release 5.5 or 6 Thursday, I'm on my way. And we get the salute emoji from Sam Altman. So likely coming tomorrow. By the way, I will be live streaming if it drops tomorrow. And if you want to see it, subscribe. Make sure you follow me, do all that good stuff. Be here tomorrow because I will be. And we'll be testing it together. I'll be talking about it. Okay, let's get back to what we're talking about. Yeah, I think the biggest issue I have is actually two things. One, the lack of clarity from Anthropic. How am I using tokens? How am I allowed to use my tokens? And just clarify it. And don't flip-flop. And just tell me. I'm okay. I'm a big boy. I can take it. Just tell me. And Chetas Lua, thank you very much for the super chat. Thank you. Awesome. And then the second thing is, I feel like they're my tokens. I pay for them, right? Let me use them how I want. If you think I'm using too many of them, lower the quota, increase the price. Just do that. Don't limit the way I use my quota. By the way, I didn't even talk about why people use subscriptions instead of the API directly. When you use the Anthropic API, you're paying full price. You are paying the maximum possible amount per token. And that's okay with Anthropic. You can use OpenCloud with the API. No problem. Use as many as you want, but you're paying so much. But for the subscription, you're paying much less. They give you a quota. It's not exactly clear because, again, there's no clarity, but you're spending far less per token using the subscription, which is why people want to use their subscription first. And again, just clarify the policy. Let me use the tokens how I need to use them. And the public reactions have not been good. Here's Jeremy Howard. For the small test, they've modified their docs to remove mention of Claude Code, and in Claude Pro, it's been a shock to see Anthropic's integrity collapse in the face of commercial pressure. Would love a renewed commitment to straightforward honesty. We have number one Anthropic hater in the world, Theo. A small test on 2% of users. Quote, I've rolled it every time. Every person I've talked to has rolled it every time. Either they are lying or the experiment was implemented incorrectly, mind clarifying, and tagged Amal. He went on to say, I just signed up for a new pro tier account, probably just to test things. And I can still use it in Claude Code. The sign up page did not indicate this. The checkout page did not indicate this. When I clicked, I want to develop during onboarding, it sent me to the Claude Code install script, and it worked as expected with my new account. Okay. We have Simon Willison, who wrote up, let's see. I don't think I'm going to cover this. You can check it out. We'll drop a link to this in the description if you want it. Or I'll drop it in chat right now, actually. I don't think there's much to cover on that. Okay. My dog's barking outside. All right. Then we get to another level of issue. They rolled out Opus 4.7. A lot of people say it's a regression compared to Opus 4.6. I like it, okay? I still love the Opus family of models. I still use it all the time, especially Opus 4.6 fast. I am a speed maxi. That's all I want. I want the top speed possible, and Opus is a fantastic model. But then they rolled out Opus 4.7, okay? And Boris from Anthropic clarified or said, Opus 4.7 uses more thinking tokens, so we've increased rate limits for all subscribers to make up for it. Great. But it's not only that it uses more thinking tokens, they actually have a new tokenizer. And the way that they process the tokens makes it use between 1 and 1.35x more tokens on the same query. Did I have that somewhere? Let's see. I think it was in the Anthropic. No, it was the Opus 4.7 model card. Here we go. All right. So in addition to it using more thinking tokens, which I think these are two separate things, and of course it's not clear, but they also have a new tokenizer. So first, Opus 4.7 uses an updated tokenizer that improves how the model processes text. The trade-off is that the same input can map to more tokens, roughly 1 to 1.3x, depending on the content type. Yes, it is separate. It says it right here. Second, Opus 4.7 thinks more at higher effort levels, particularly on later turns in agentic settings. This improves reliability on hard problems, but it does mean it produces more output tokens. So they, in the face of this massive compute crunch, they do two things which make it worse. They roll out a model with a new tokenizer, causing about 35% more tokens. Okay. Then they also roll out a new model, the same model, that uses more thinking tokens. And so they're just doing themselves no favor on the compute crunch that they are so clearly in. And so that same quota that you're battling for, that you're having to beg Anthropic for, you're going to be going through it more quickly now. And there's nothing you can do about it. And so I want to talk a little bit about the economics of all of this now. This was actually brought up, I believe Jonah from my team kind of brought this up, and it was a really good point. So I'm going to talk about it. Let's include it in this video. So here's what's happening. While all this so here is what is also happening at the same time as everything else. They are having severe commercial pressure. They are in between a rock and a hard place. They have the best coding model. They have a frontier coding model. But ultimately, they are selling tokens at a loss. Every single token they sell is at a loss. And of course, that means their business is operating at a loss. Now, this isn't abnormal. Amazon for years did this. Uber for years did this. This is traditional VC-backed subsidization of consumer spend. Okay, so they're selling every single token at a loss, and power users are the ones that they're losing the most money on. People like us, the ones that are using OpenClaw, the ones that are using Claude Code aggressively. That's who they're losing money on. And then compounded with their compute shortage, they're in this weird place. They can't raise their prices. That would be one of the solutions, but they can't do it. Because what happens if they raise their prices? People are just going to go to OpenAI. They're going to go to Codex. So they can't raise prices, and they also can't serve the demand they have. So regardless of which direction they go in, people are moving to Codex, and that's very clear. Codex user growth is skyrocketing right now. It's not Claude Code level, but it's getting there. And so all of these half measures is what we're seeing. OpenClaw ban, quota manipulation, lack of transparency into usage, lack of clarity into what is within policy and what's not. That's what we're seeing. Those are the half measures. They are effectively price increases without actually being honest about it. Now, OpenAI is in the same boat. Okay, they're losing money on every token, but they have been much more aggressive on CapEx spend to try to build out more compute. They have acquired more compute. They have more compute overall. Let's look it up. Let's see if we can find it. All right. I think this is accurate. Let's see. OpenAI versus Anthropic compute wars. This is through 2026. Compute in gigawatts. On the y-axis, we have timeline on the x-axis. And as you can see, OpenAI has, for the life of these companies, had more compute than Anthropic. There was a brief period towards the end of 2025 where it's clear that Anthropic unlocked a massive amount of new compute. But then so did OpenAI. And you can just see it doesn't really look like the gap is closing. OpenAI just has more compute. And in fact, they just announced another deal where they're acquiring more compute. In fact, Anthropic also announced a compute deal with AWS just recently, I think a day ago. But those compute deals won't Those compute deals won't come to fruition. You won't start to see those until later this quarter at the very earliest. And I want to actually take a moment to talk about how each of these companies are faring. Google, OpenAI, Anthropic, and now xAI on this like compute versus demand spectrum. And of course, I'm going to break out drawings again. All right. Brace yourselves for a flashbang. Okay. So we have this spectrum. Okay. And let's say on one side we have compute rich, and on the other side we have demand. And where you want to fall on this is right in the middle. Okay. You want an equal amount compute with an equal amount of demand. Okay. So over here on this side, we have xAI. Whoops. So over here, we have xAI, also known as SpaceX. They have a ton of compute. They aggressively built out the fastest 0 to 100,000 GPU server farm in history. I think it took 18 months, something like that, some ridiculous number. But their models weren't that good, or they were good, they weren't as good. They weren't as good as Anthropic. And so people, although they were using it, and they built out all this compute, it wasn't enough demand to match all of that compute. Okay, that's why you just saw the deal yesterday with Cursor, which I'll talk about in a moment. Okay, so we have xAI right there. On the other side, we have Anthropic. Okay, Anthropic has all the demand. They have too much demand. Okay, but they don't have enough compute to serve all of that demand. Okay, so those are the two ends of the spectrum. Now let's start going towards the middle. Now on this side, compute rich doesn't even give it enough credit, but they also have a lot of demand, and that's Google. Google has so much compute that they are selling TPUs. They are running inference for their competitors, Anthropic, and they're also serving their Gemini family of models. They have enough compute to do all of it. They don't go down. They don't have downtime. That is insane. That is insane to think about, that they have enough compute to fulfill all of those different obligations, where every other company either can't get enough compute to run their models or are trying to get enough compute and are barely scraping by. Gemini and Google at the same time, they're saying, we're good. We got enough for everything we need. Plus, we're going to go ahead and sell our TPUs and just make a ton of money along the way. Okay, so we have Google there. Okay, and then, of course, the last one, we have OpenAI. Okay, OpenAI has a ton of demand. They definitely have more compute than Anthropic, less compute than Google, but they're not suffering. They can use more, but they're not being squashed under the, but they're, let's see if I think of a better way to say this. But they're not absolutely being destroyed and making poor decisions because of their insane skew between demand and supply. I need 2 axes. I know. I should have done it a little bit differently. If I did something like, oops, not like that. I should have made it more like this, right? Where it's compute over here and demand. Oops. Demand over there. But I don't want to refilm that whole part. So you got to live with it. Yeah, I realized that after. I'll do better next time. Okay, we're going back to Google Chrome. Okay. All right, where was I? Actually, I just did an interview with Thomas, the CEO of Google Cloud. And actually, I can talk about this because the embargo has been lifted. And I asked him directly, how is it possible that while every other frontier lab seems to be in a compute crunch, Google has enough compute to service their competitors, service their own models, and actually sell the physical hardware? How could that be possible? They're not taking the AWS approach, which is we're just going to be a cloud service. We're going to power all of the AI labs, and we're not going to pick winners, but we don't have our own model. No, they have their own model. And it didn't really make sense to me. And so maybe we'll put the clip here. Let me see. I'll intro it. I don't know if it makes sense here, but we'll see. And in fact, let me just show you a clip from that right now. Okay, but Anthropic is not sitting still, all right? Anthropic just announced 2 days ago, Anthropic and Amazon expand collaboration for up to 5 gigawatts of new compute. Okay, so they are using the Trainium set of models they are using Trainium from Amazon, AWS. They're using their other chips to serve their models. And so they're not sitting still. They're trying to acquire it. But these types of deals, when they're announced, only become available to serve demand months later. We are committing more than $100 billion over the next 10 years to AWS technologies, securing up to 5 gigawatts of new capacity to train and run Claude. Spans Graviton, Trainium 2 through Trainium 4 chips, with the option to purchase future generations of Amazon's custom silicon as they become available. But in the interim, before they can service their demand, that demand is going elsewhere and it's going to OpenAI. And I actually want to take a slight detour just for a moment and talk about this news that came out yesterday. SpaceX AI, and Cursor are now working closely together to create the world's best coding and knowledge work AI. The combination of Cursor's leading product and distribution to expert software engineers with SpaceX's million H100 equivalent Colossus training supercomputer will allow us to build the world's most useful models. So remember that spectrum that I just showed you? We had XAI, SpaceXAI on one end, and they have an enormous amount of compute, but not enough demand. Well, Cursor has a ton of demand, and they're paying for it. Now, they don't have their own models, or at least they don't have their own frontier model yet, but maybe they will now. And so I actually think this SpaceXAI X Cursor acquisition is very smart. They acquire the best coding data set in the world. They acquire people who know how to train models, even though they also have that. And they can immediately start serving and start utilizing a lot of the capacity that they have that they're not using today. The worst feeling in the world for Elon and for the XAI team is knowing that your compute that you spent so much money on, that you work so hard to stand up, is sitting there idle. It is a horrible feeling. It's similar to a feeling that I get when my agents are not running, and maybe you feel that way as well. Cursor has also given SpaceX the right to acquire Cursor later this year for $60 billion or pay $10 billion for our work together. So that's going to be great. Good for them. Shout out Cursor. They hook it up with tokens for me. They don't sponsor any of my videos, but I just love using them. And so let me wrap this up. It all comes back to that original sin by Dario. He miscalculated, he underestimated the amount of AI demand that there was going to be and how fast it was going to grow. Sam Altman, on the other hand, did not. And he put his company at risk. Let me think of it a different way. And he actually put his entire company at risk of going bankrupt because he had such conviction about the growth of artificial intelligence. And it turns out Sam was right, Dario was wrong. And in this moment, this is the moment in which OpenAI is going to capture a lot of that demand. Anthropic is pissing off people. OpenAI is doubling down. They're capturing all the demand. They are pouncing on every opportunity, every misstep that Anthropic makes, and I'm here for it because it helps us, consumers, prosumers, enterprise users. We're the ones who benefit from all of this competition. So Anthropic's flywheel is stuck right now. The greatest flywheel in history is stuck, and they need more compute to unlock it. The way that they're dealing with it in the meantime, quota games, AWS deal, tier shuffling, but it takes time, and until then, OpenAI is eating it up. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving a like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. All right, that's the vid. I think keep sucking up to OpenAI. Abba did a bouse. They don't pay me. They don't give me any tokens. Look, I'm just calling it like I see it. I have been a big Anthropic fan for a while. So if you think I'm just sucking up to OpenAI, I mean, I have to talk about it in some way. So I'm going to keep talking about a couple other things, but that was that video. I'm going to do a transition. Who can come up with the best sponsor transition? Drop it in chat right now. Something related to what I was just talking about, transitioning into whatever the sponsor ends up being for this video. Luigi, that's why you don't talk about Kimmy. So Alex from my team, producer Alex, told me I should be talking about Kimmy just this morning. There is no reason I'm not doing it. I promise you that. I just have to talk about whatever's most exciting to me in the moment. Blue Sky, FPV, and now for something completely different. No, that is not what I'm going for. Something related. Who can come up with the best transition? Speaking of AI, check out. Brian, you're not helping. Justice for Kimmy. What are you doing in there? All right, I got it. Let's see. And so if you're on the cutting edge of AI like I am, and you're using all of Anthropic's tokens, you'd probably also like the sponsor of today's... Oh, my dog. You'd probably also like the You'll also like the sponsor of today's video. All right. Crazy, my dog barked right in that moment. Yeah, look, I was certainly inspired by what Theo was doing, where he was live streaming but also recording videos, and I really enjoy live streaming, so I wanted to try it, and certainly inspired by Theo, inspired by Primogen, and everybody else who came before that. I just experimenting with it right now. We'll see if it works. So that was that. I think I covered everything. Yep, that's the video. I'm going to start uploading that actually. All right. Alex, I'm starting to upload that video. Oh, that was a long one. Yeah. All right. Micah Saw 3D, better format in my opinion. Live stream plus videos. Yeah, look, it's I'm not great at it yet. Hopefully I'll get better. I'll figure it out, but I enjoy it. So like I just have to do what's fun, and we'll go for there. From there, I should say. All right. Yeah, what was that? Yeah, I don't know. I was wondering if you guys heard that. That was a crazy noise that just happened outside. I don't know what that was. I kind of want to go see, but I guess it's not a big deal. I didn't hear anybody screaming. Oh, Brian, you're gonna have to clip that. That scared the crap out of me. No, that was not a dog. That was something very large just being dropped somewhere very close to me. Okay, I'll be right back. I gotta go find out what this is. Yep, no sound. I'm a newbie. Got it. Thank you. Yeah, turns out somebody was moving furniture in my house and decided to drop something incredibly heavy basically right outside of my office. Yeah. Um, oh, this is such a good tweet by Rune. In the interest of being an honest commentator and my urge to counter signal, Claude is an excellent product. Yes, it is. And it bodes well for them that their main problem is everyone really wants it. And so they have to do odd shit to shake off demand. It's kind of like governing California. Yeah. I grew up in California, and that is exactly what it feels like. They're doing everything they can to make it very difficult to live here. But like, where else are you gonna get this weather? And so they have a monopoly on weather, and thus they're able to govern how they want. Similarly, Anthropic Claude is a fantastic product, and so they can govern it how they want. Cool. I think we're gonna call it there. Thanks for hanging out, everybody. I appreciate it. I think we're gonna do more of these. Let me know what you think, and follow me at Matthew Berman on Twitter, forwardfuture.ai for the newsletter. What else? Let's see. Please do more. Yeah. Subscribe if you're on Twitch. If you're watching on Twitch, if you're watching on YouTube, go follow me on X if you're there. And we'll do more of this. Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Alex. Thanks, Jonah. Thanks, Nick, for helping out, hanging out. And we'll talk again soon. See ya.